Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome once again to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. I am, of course, as always, from now until forever, your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Something came across my eyeballs, all four of them, today, and it's something fun that I thought would be fun to talk about, so I will talk about it. We're going to get into card fighting games. Or board fighting games, card fighting, board games, kind of like Magic the Gathering and others like that. But no, there's a new one in town. There's a new one on the scene called Unmatched. And I am not personally hugely into card fighting games. I very much like them. I actually, can I be reasonable with you? Can I admit to you here on Geek Therapy Radio where it is a convalescence or convent, what have you, of like-minded geeks. I've never actually played Magic the Gathering or the Star Wars customizable card game or anything like Star Trek. I've never played anything like that. I've never even played Pokemon card game or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or any of that stuff. I'm just admitting to you. But I always liked the idea of them, and I always thought it was fun to at least watch people play. I can respect it very, very much so. I know that there can be a bit of cheating or unfair advantage. Let's say I know that for Magic the Gathering, you can part of the mystique, part of the challenge, part of the strategy of these card games is to build a successful deck. And you can build a successful deck over time, either by winning cards from other players or by purchasing expansion decks or purchasing cards from other players, going on eBay and spending $5,000 for an ultra rare card, things like that. But it can be manipulated and, undone, not unlike DLC in video games where, hey, sometimes you can gain the advantage. A player has the advantage simply by being wealthy. I heard a story that happened in the past few years of, a gentleman of advanced in years, not old or anything, but maybe in his 30s, playing against little kids at a video game shop, at a retro game shop that hosted these game nights. So it's basically a 35-year-old guy versus a 10-year-old kid. And the whole point of this shop putting on these game nights was to introduce the younger generations to card games. So this guy in his 30s up against a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, a young person, basically with a deck that he's accrued over years worth thousands of dollars, going up against a little kid. He was ejected from the tournament. The older guy was, for being very unfair and going against the whole theme of the night, which is basically to, like I said, introduce younger players to the game. And this guy just comes in being a D-bag. And what possible fun was this guy having, just laying waste to 10-year-olds? Like, how did that make him feel bigger or better? He got kicked out. It was a news story. I'll find the article to it and put it in the podcast description here if I can find it. But he got kicked out. He was turning over tables and all. He had to be escorted out, and it's a whole big deal. Just a giant baby is what it amounted to, really. So anyways, I understand that there's a big, huge fan base around fighting card games. Absolutely. And I do, I adore that passion from that community. Obviously, this is Geek Therapy Radio. This is where we celebrate all those passions and different geek things. People are geeks about everything. I say that every week. That's the motto of the show. So just because I'm not personally a geek about something doesn't mean that there aren't millions of other people who are. And somebody listening to this right now might not be a geek about aviation the way I'm a geek about aviation, or a geek about tinkering with solar panels like I'm a geek about tinkering with solar panels. It's okay. That's one of the beautiful things about geekdom, is that it's a wide, diverse variety of things and hobbies to be geeks about. Don't care about cars, but you like working with pastels and oil paintings. That's completely fine. That's the beauty of this whole thing here. But a game came out that I am interested in. Just the very premise of it is fantastic to me. It's from Mondo Games, and again, I'll include links in the podcast description here. It's called Unmatched. In the entire premise of Unmatched is it's taking characters both fictional and real, and basically, have you ever had the argument with a friend, who would win in a fight? Bruce Lee versus Bigfoot, or the Jurassic Park Raptors versus Merlin, or I don't know, the Wolverine versus Chucky, either from the movie, the horror movie, or from actual Rugrats. The Jurassic Park Raptor versus Chucky from Rugrats. Anyways, might be a surprise in there. Who knows? Chucky from Rugrats might have plus 200, I don't know, doo-doo smell. It might throw the raptor off. I have no idea. We can postulate things, and then we can make these arguments over who would win in a fight about these things, Loch Ness Monster or Dracula. All these stupid pairings, but this is what Unmatched is about. The card game Unmatched from Mondo Games. This is what it's all about. It's so you can settle these arguments. And I guess settling is kind of, are you really settling it? Because it comes down to strategy and luck in these types of games. So, for instance, Bruce Lee versus King Arthur. Bruce Lee has the movement advantage. He's more agile than King Arthur because King Arthur has that big sword and it limits his mobility, so he can move less spaces in a given turn than Bruce Lee, who can get in there. Also, Bruce Lee has way more attacks dealt per card. So where King Arthur can, maybe administer 2 attacks in a given turn, Bruce Lee can unleash 4, 6, or maybe even 8 attacks because of his fast fists and his fast movements. So it's a very fun premise to me, and I can't wait to see how this game does. The little picture here I'm seeing is it looks like an amiibo, or it's a little statue, little figurine, little game piece. It's Bruce Lee, and the next game piece is, like I just mentioned, King Arthur. And there's different expansion sets, so while there may not be certain characters that you can fight against other characters in myth and mythology and in real life, there will be expansion sets available. There'll be expansion boards available because the arenas that you fight in can add different characteristics and attributes to the fight. For instance, if you're fighting in a marsh, I would say, or in a swamp, agility across the board and mobility across the board would be reduced. So if Bruce Lee has an 8 plus 8 agility, maybe it's only plus 4 if you're playing in a swamp and thereabouts. There's all sorts of these factors and different, if you've played these card games, just how multifaceted it can be, just how strategic it can be, just how up to chance a lot of stuff can be. And it's very fun to settle bar arguments. Who would win? Rocky Balboa versus Mike Tyson, or Rocky Balboa versus the Terminator. You could settle it. I would say right now, I'm just going to say, I think the Terminator, because of what the Terminator is, would beat a mere mortal man in fisticuffs. T-1000 versus the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. I can make a whole podcast for hours just with these imaginary fight scenarios between these characters, but that's what Unmatched is all about. And I think for those of you interested, again, I'll link in the podcast, I think you'd be very, very interested in this game. I'm very interested in this game for the sheer how on the nose it is about these mythical fights that we come up with in our brains. Well, now you can actually fight the characters together. It's like, Super Smash Brothers it's a video game, obviously. It's a fighting game, side-scrolling fighting game, or side view fighting game. But you can actually see, who would win? Mario versus Mega Man, Ryu versus Samus. You can test these things out within that video game. So Unmatched is sort of like that. I'm curious about what matchups either that exist in this game, Unmatched, or that you're merely you've merely pondered in your life, or maybe you just pondered right now that I'm mentioning it. I would love to hear your ideas about it. So I'm going to plug the email right here, and feel free to email me. I'll bring it up. I'll give you a shout out. I'll say Billy from wherever, Billy from the Ukraine wants to know who would win in a fight. Bob Saget versus all of the Muppet Babies. I would love to hear from you what your fight, your matchups, your pairings. GeekTherapy at iHeartMedia.com. I always repeat it. GeekTherapy at iHeartMedia.com. Also, a super easy way is to go on the Facebook page, Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook. Like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff there, and just leave a comment. Just post it on my wall there on the Geek Therapy Radio Facebook page here. Not just who you think would win in a fight, but who do you want to see in a fight? Just in a fight, for instance, Robin Hood would have the distance attacks where Robin Hood versus oh man. I'm sorry I'm taking time on this, but this is a podcast. This is what I get to do. Robin Hood versus a Smurf. So Robin Hood has the distance. What would the Smurf have? What kind of melee ability would a Smurf have? Versus Papa Smurf. Robin Hood versus Papa Smurf. Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook, and email me, geektherapy at iHeartMedia.com. I would freaking love to hear your matchups. We can go back and forth on this all day. All day, son. My eyes are watering. Legitimately watering from... Jeez. Just very fun. I think that's about time to... No, I'm going to cover one more subject. Let me throw a twofer in here in this edition of the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. It's news on if you have an iOS device, so an iPhone or an iPad or anything like that, prior to the latest iPhone 11. Jailbreaking, if you're familiar with what jailbreaking is, I used to be into jailbreaking back when I had an iPhone, and I wish I could jailbreak my iPad. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. There was a definite heyday in jailbreaking, and for the past few years or so, some have said that the jailbreaking scene is largely dead. It's not as easy and accessible as it once was, even several years ago. But that has all changed recently, and this is sweet news to me because I like to tinker with devices. I would love to jailbreak my iPad. The developer of Checkm8 has issued an iDevice jailbreak that some say is a game changer, according here to Ars Technica. I get it. Game changer, I get it. You can put emulators on it and stuff. Okay. So the team or the man or the guy or the girl, I'm not sure if it's a male or female who this person is, but Axiomics, AXI0MX. He is responsible for the Checkm8 vulnerability hack. But the thing about this is it affects multiple generations of iOS devices. So it's not just, I've jailbroken the iPhone 10. No, this goes all the way back to iPhone 3G, whatever. It's everything, because this exploit is baked into each device. It is at the chip level. It's in the bootloader. It's in the boot ROM. Apple can't patch this if they tried. Now, one concern you can kind of take off the table here is, no, this isn't something that's going to allow your iPad or your iPhone to be exploited if you plug into a charge port at the airport or anything like that. No, there's still more to it than that. A casual hacker passerby can't just grab your phone and instantly hack it to see our information. They need a few more tools for that. So the only way they can really do that is if you left your phone in the hotel room unlocked, completely unlocked, no Face ID, no fingerprint ID, no PIN number, anything like that. All your security, this is after, or I shouldn't say after, but the security level is unchanged. So they still need to be able to get into your device. This isn't a vulnerability that allows people to get your contact information, for instance, if your device is locked. It's nothing like that. So the security risk is as far as jailbreaking is concerned, and this sort of sphere of technological hackery is concerned, it's relatively low risk. So you don't have to take any extra precautions if you're an iPhone owner and you don't have any idea what jailbreaking is. You just, as long as your phone is password protected or Face ID protected or fingerprint protected or all three, however many multi-level authentications you use on your iPhones, you don't have to worry about it. Just keep your iPhone safe as you normally do and you'll be fine. But for people like me who like to tinker and would love to put Super Nintendo emulators on my iPad and pair it up to a Bluetooth controller, this is a boon. Now, this is early access, or this early on in the exploit. There will come Axiomics. I keep forgetting it. Yeah, Axiomics says that eventually he'll tune this thing down a little bit to use Cydia and make the jailbreaking aspect a bit easier, more streamlined. But for now, the exploit is there. It's going to be, like I said, smoothed out and streamlined. For the rest of us who, I like to tinker with things, but I am obviously, if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, I'm not an expert in hacking or manipulating a kernel or getting into the bootloader and doing stuff like that on my end. I am incapable of finding the hacks myself, but I am capable of reading a walkthrough or a guide to jailbreaking something. And as I think most of us are, if we're kind of more techie, I guess, like that. So I'm excited to see where this goes because I'm a simple man. I want to put Yoshi's Island on my iPad, for instance. That would be great. A PPSSPP, a PSP emulator. That'd be great on the iPad. iPad has awesome battery life, awesome screen. It would be a wonderful emulation device, but given the nature of iOS, Apple doesn't allow any unlicensed apps or any kind of side-loaded things onto its tablets or iOS devices without jumping through major hurdles that make it almost impossible, or at least such a burden to even attempt it. So if this Checkmate jailbreak refines itself over the next few weeks, few months, I will jump at the opportunity, and I'll let you know how it goes on my end with doing that. As I understand it right now, every time you turn off the device, you have to re-jailbreak it when you turn it back on. This is not a persistent, they call it. It's not a persistent jailbreak. It has something that has to be redone every time you turn on your device. But that's where we're at with PSP right now. We've been there for a long time. If you turn off the PSP, you have to go in and do a soft recovery of the hack, basically, of the custom firmware. So I'm used to that. So that's not a deterrent for me. But I just thought you guys would be interested to know that to pay it, if you're into the jailbreaking scene and hacking your iOS devices, check out Checkm8. It's Checkm8. So the actual number 8. So just Checkmate. But instead of mate, it's an actual number 8. Just Google it. You'll find some stuff about it. I just wanted to put it on your radar, bring it to your attention. And I think that's it for this podcast tonight. Thank you for listening. I have been Johnny Hemberger, your mental curator, reminding you that you are freaking worthy of love. Giving and receiving love, you are worthy of love. We're all geeks about something. Embrace your inner geek. Be good to yourselves and others. I know it can be a lot harder to be good to ourselves than it is to be good to others. A lot of times we're good to others because we hate ourselves. So I'm just saying, try working on little baby steps to loving yourself and treating yourself with respect. I think it's a very healthy, worthy endeavor for a lot of us that all of us should pursue, including myself, including the Dalai Lama, anybody. Always, working on respecting yourself more and more is a very noble effort indeed, as far as mental health goes and psychological health goes. So you're worthy of it. You're worthy of loving yourself, basically. That's all I want to say. Until next time, talk to you later.
Geek Therapy Radio. Saturday night at 10 on KPRC 950. Or listen anytime on our iHeartRadio app.